This is the Scarlet Thread, an overview of the Old Testament, and I'm your teacher, Ryan Dalglish. Well, for video 8, we are going to be in Genesis 22 today. We've been looking at these places over the last week of Genesis and how it points to Christ. 7 different videos about how the Old Testament is setting up the story of Jesus for us. And we want to see that today, that Genesis 22 also points to Jesus. It's a beautiful story. It's one of my favorites. Let's dive in here. Genesis 22, verse 1. After these things, God tested Abraham and said, Abraham. And Abraham said to him, Here I am, Lord. And he said, Take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I will show you. So go to the land of Moriah. So this is the area of Moriah, all right? This is that area. And offer him on one of the mountains there that I will show you. So Moriah is kind of this area, and there's mountains in Moriah. So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him and his son Isaac. One of the things I want to point out too is he says, your only son Isaac. That'll be important in just a moment. So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him and his son Isaac. And he cut the wood for the burnt offering, and rose and went to the place of which God had told him. On the 3rd day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from a distance. Abraham said to his young men, this is a cool verse, Stay here with the donkey, and I and the boy will go over there, and we will worship, and we will come back to you. Now, one of the reasons that that's really interesting is that Abraham assumes, right, that he's coming back with Isaac. He tells his servants, we're going to go over there, we're going to worship, and we'll come back to you. But God has told Abraham, what I want you to do is I want you to go and sacrifice your son there as an offering to me. And so it feels a little inconsistent. You're going to go sacrifice your son. But the answer for us comes in Hebrews 11. Abraham didn't think God was going to keep his son from being sacrificed. Abraham believed that he would sacrifice his son and that God would raise him from the dead. And that's what the author tells us in Hebrews 11, that Abraham believed. Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering, laid it on Isaac his son, and he took it in his hand, the fire and the knife, and they both of them went together. Isaac said to his father Abraham, My father. And he said, Here I am, my son. And he said, Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham said, God will provide for himself, that's key too, the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. So they both went together. When they came to the place of which God had told him, Abraham built the altar there and laid the wood in order and bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And Abraham said, Here I am. And he said, Do not lay your hand on the boy and do not do anything to him, for I know that you fear God, seeing that you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him was a ram caught in the thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son. So pause here for a moment. And one of the things that's interesting is people tend to teach this story as though Isaac is the picture of Christ. This is a picture of Christ, but Isaac isn't that picture. And so what people do is they say, oh, well, it said early on that Isaac was Abraham's only son, and Isaac was carrying the wood up the hill, and they were gone for 3 days. And so they take all these pieces and try to lay them over the story of Jesus going to the cross and being dead for 3 days. The problem with that is that Isaac doesn't die. The ram in the thicket dies. The ram is provided in place of Isaac. And one of the things that we've seen is that in Genesis 21, we've seen this kind of comparison between Ishmael and Isaac. And we also see in Galatians chapter 4, which is a really key text, and Romans chapter 9, that Isaac is a picture of the redeemed people, those who put faith in God. And so Isaac isn't the picture of Christ. Isaac is the picture of you and I who have put faith in God. And Christ died in our place. Christ died for us. So the ram died. So this is a picture of Jesus, but Jesus is the ram. Remember, on the mount of the Lord, it will be provided. So Abraham called the name of that place, the Lord will provide. And it is said to this day, on the mount of the Lord, it will be provided. And the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, By myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this and not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you, and I will multiply your offspring as the stars of the heaven and the sand of the seashore, and your offspring will possess the gates of his enemies. And in your offspring shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. We've seen that already in Genesis 12 and Genesis 15. And this, through your offspring, that's the reference to Christ. In your offspring, all the nations of the earth will be blessed because you have obeyed my voice. So Abraham returned to his young men, and they arose and they went to Beersheba, and Abraham lived in Beersheba. So he calls this place, on the mountain of the Lord it will be provided. And this is in the region, in the area of Moriah. Now, this is important for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is in 1 Samuel 24, and you'll also find this in, 2 Samuel 24. That's right, 2 Samuel 24 and 1 Chronicles 21, we see that David counts his mighty men. He wasn't supposed to do that. He sinned against God by counting the mighty men. And then God sends a judgment, and he is destroying all these places. He's destroying all these people. And the angel of the Lord comes, and he's just outside Jerusalem. He's just about to destroy Jerusalem, and he stops. And the mountain he stops on is this mountain, this very place, okay? This is the same place that he stops. And God says, okay, don't kill the people of Jerusalem. And he has his angel stop there. Then also in 2 Chronicles chapter 3, listen to what it says. Solomon began to build the house of the Lord in Jerusalem on Mount Moriah, where the Lord had appeared to David the father at the place that David had appointed on the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. So that's the reference to 2 Samuel 24 and 1 Chronicles 21. So you have this land that's called Moriah. It's got these hills on it. And this is where David has an encounter with God, makes an offering to God. Abraham, of course, first had this encounter with God. And now Solomon builds the temple of the Lord on this same place, this same area. And Christ, we know, is crucified on Golgotha. And so you go, how is this all connected? Well, we know that Christ was crucified outside the temple. The temple is on Mount Moriah. This whole area is called Moriah. But Christ was killed on Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. And it's interesting because these two hills are just a couple of 100 meters apart, a couple 100 yards apart. And so they can be seen from each other. And so it was in this region, right, that Christ was provided as the sacrifice. We're not even a kilometer, not even a mile away from the location where that took place. It's not like in a different country. God brought Abraham to this place. He says, go to the place I'm going to show you. Go and offer your son there. I have something I want to teach you. Abraham believed he was going to have to kill his son, believed that God was going to raise his son back to life. And in this region, in this area, is the very region that the temple would be built, the very region that Christ would be crucified, just outside the city walls, just outside the temple court, and he would be crucified there in this same area as a picture, fulfilling the picture of what we see here with Abraham and Isaac and the ram back in Genesis 22. So all of these things take place in really quick walking distance from each other, just a few minutes, and you're right there. And so it's really kind of cool that God brought Abraham to this place 1,500 years before Christ to show what he was going to do in this same exact region, in this same exact place called Moriah and Golgotha, and they're all kind of there together, which would eventually be called Jerusalem, and the temple would be built there. And so again, this is just foreshadowing and foretelling the story of Christ, and it is beautiful, and I love it so much. And we will continue to see tomorrow how the whole Bible is pointing us to Jesus. Join us again next time. Thanks for watching A Scarlet Thread. We hope that you've enjoyed this new resource by Simpler Bible and that it will help you to enjoy and understand the Bible more fully and to dive in deeper in your study, that it'll be a great resource for you. This was originally created to be part of a training program for pastors around the world, and we hope that it's been a blessing to you as well. Don't forget that we have other resources available at simplerbible.com, where you can find our course Through the Bible in a Year, which is daily videos about 15 minutes long that take you through the scripture holistically. It's going to be a blessing. But we have other resources that we're creating for you as well. So stop by, check out what we have, and we look forward to seeing you soon.